Hey everyone, this is your favorite friend Jay, and today I have Sarah Cogan, an amazing costume designer and also a visionary with a lot to talk about in the costume design world, as well as aligning. Let me tell you exactly what I read about Sarah. Script and visual design through creating this very new, innovative concept of aligning design in a sort of a holistic design and visual storytelling concept. So, what I want to say is, how are you, Sarah?
I'm well. Thanks so much for having me, Jay. I appreciate it. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited too. So, what I want to ask you is, now that I read about you, is how do you define yourself in terms of being a costume designer, but also using elements of costume design and holistic design to tell the story differently in film and TV? How do you define yourself as a professional?
Yeah, thanks for the great question. I define myself these days as a costume designer. And I also do production design, so designer and visual producer for film and television. So I really help people to create that cinematic cohesion. What I've learned is, and just as you said, of like aligning the visuals of their story to their script. What I've learned in my career working professionally for the last over like 13 years, is that film schools and film programs don't actually teach filmmakers about design and how it serves the story and how to utilize it as a storytelling mechanism. And then what happens is they're then going out into the world doing the work, and either they're doing their own films because they haven't yet um, pierced the threshold to be able to hire designers. And they're like, okay, great, I've done everything my film school told me to do. Why is no one paying attention? Or they are finally at a place of hiring designers and they don't even know how to truly have that collaboration and what that looks like. And so, or how to communicate clearly and effectively. And so I kind of found this problem, this missing gap in information out by I had started writing my own projects. I have a series I'm getting ready to pitch after the writer's strike ends, and it's all because of the worlds that I want to build and the imagery I want to see and create. I'm an artist also, like I paint and I do stuff like that on my own time. Uh and so it became like I met all these filmmakers in that process who were like, I don't know how to even communicate with a designer. Like, what am I supposed to provide? Do I provide a lot? Do I provide a little? Like, what do I do? And then on the other side, the designers are going, well, why don't they understand what we do? Why do they not understand what it costs? Why do they not understand the labor that goes into it? They're asking for so much and they don't seem to understand that. And I was like, well, they're saying that no one's given them that information. And so we're sitting over here as designers being like, how do you not know? And they literally don't even have a resource to go to. And so it started with, how do I bridge that gap in understanding, and how do I help people to find a relationship around, and understand for filmmakers, especially if you're an indie, and well, even if you're not indie, even if you're on majors, the more clear your creative vision is, the better you are at articulating that, and the better you are, because I've worked at major motions. I have done everything from, huge blockbuster films, premium television, to like the films like 18 and a half that are micro budget. And when you don't have a clear vision as a creator, I mean, you send your team on a, kind of like on a wild goose chase of what your film's going to look like. And either you're, as a filmmaker, completely relinquishing the visual elements of your film over to somebody else because you don't know how to communicate that well, or you've misled them so much that they're going to spend more money, more, there's like three ways this happens. You mislead them and then they end up spending way more money. There's the former of like you turn over your complete creative design. Or it's you're so stuck in what it is in your own mind's eye that there's no room for collaboration, and it makes it almost impossible. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack for the design team of filling in that kind of thing. So how do we make that process better? And how do we make it so that that process also, I mean, because here's the thing, even if you cannot afford to have a designer on your film, you as a filmmaker, they, you get to figure it out, because the film design is part of the context that you're setting for the story that you're creating. And it's part of the snap judgments that we as humans make. We inherently make, these judgments on people and on spaces the minute we see them and walk into them. And so that is what design does, and that's what design helps. And if you don't have somebody else doing it for you, that's the luxury isn't having the design itself. The luxury is having somebody else take it over for you and add that in. And that's just it's a piece of delegation and understanding that. And so that's kind of where all my process of how do I help fill this gap. It's kind of a long answer.
And no, actually, it totally makes sense now, because now when I think about it, there are directors like Wong Kar-wai or Denis Villeneuve. You can feel there is this theme, there is this mood, there is this element. Everything fits together perfectly. Even the clothes, the makeup, the lighting. So what you're telling me is world building and visual storytelling could fill in the gaps for, let me say, a director or a creator who hasn't reached that yet, or who still needs to fill in the gaps. Like, you could be a director and this is your first movie, but you don't know how to create a world. So this is where your vision gets in totally, because it's not only about clothes, it's about making this world feasible. And like, this is the first thing that I see. I would know if a director was actually in command of all the tools, or if, yeah, you know what, this could have been done. So I feel like you can be sort of a consultant to the world building process itself of filmmaking. So I want to know, have you ever seen a film where you felt like, oh wow, this fits perfectly where I am right now, or I can envision myself doing that, like something on a scale like a Godfather, for example, where you have the mood and the sets and themes are together throughout the series, or even a Marvel movie?
Yeah, I would say so. It's interesting. I like, I mean, I definitely look at a lot of shows and I go, I could see myself doing a show like that. Dream type shows would be like Sabrina the Teenage Witch, right? The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina the Teenage Witch, where it's contemporary meets a blended world of like a period and fantasy and kind of this otherworldliness. Like that type of stuff really speaks to me. I'm working with a filmmaker on a pilot and like the world building of that. That's kind of this blend of all these different things. Of like, fairy tale clothing motifs that you would see in like fairy tale princesses meets contemporary high fashion, which meets, all this stuff. And so that interests me, as well as like the show that I wrote that I'm going to be working on pitching is set in the 1700s, and it's like very period accurate. Like I want it to be very period accurate in a lot of ways. And even that kind of level of world building of how do we, the thing that I think people don't realize is when you do a periods inevitably, I mean, every film is a built world, whether it's period, sci-fi, fantasy, or contemporary now, right? We're going to go into a location. If it's a contemporary film, it's happening today, and we're going to bring in props. We're going to move the furniture around. I even just did this on a documentary. I went in and I went and set dressed all these dock locations to be like, oh, um, uh, they all were changed, right? So we never really go into a location when filming and go, this is exactly what it is, and it doesn't change, right? It's we always make some sort of adjustment, whether it's moving furniture around a bit, adding in a curtain, taking bringing in set dressing is really about bringing in the character's personality into a space. So if it's that, then like bringing that in, and so it's not real. And then you're bringing in actors who have been dressed in clothes that have been specifically picked out for that moment, right? We're lighting the scene a certain way. We're shooting the camera and creating a vision a certain way. It's all completely built, right? So I think really kind of realizing that everything, even contemporary films, are built worlds, and you have to think about it in that sense. And then I just kind of get nerdy about like, well, what is that world? What are we, I love contemporary films for the same reason of they can be that. But I mean, I always love doing the ones where there's a little more of a magic in them of some sort, magical realism, where there's, whether it's true fantasy, I would love to do a film, uh, like with Guillermo del Toro,
Del
like that
Toro, I
kind
was
of
just gonna
aesthetic,
say Pan's
you know?
Labyrinth and all the greats.
Yeah. I mean, I even just loved, I know I don't think Crimson Peaks was as well received, but I really enjoyed the design of that
Me
film and
too.
the aesthetic and the world of that. And so like that kind of stuff also speaks to me.
So you've been on a children's educational show. So
Yeah.
how fun is that? I mean, you work with colors, you work with the colors are even different, you work with puppets. How fun was it to do? And did you implement your vision also into that?
Yeah, so that show was Helpsters and I was the assistant costume designer. So as the assistant, your job is to really serve the designer's vision and bring your own expertise in and help. So like a lot of things that I did was we did some new things like um we built a bunch of outfits from scratch. And so I did a lot of that's a process that I'm very familiar with, building custom bespoke garments. And so, I oversaw some of that and helped with that and like um created processes to help, test out things and figure stuff out and kind of really went more for like the logic brain on that, as well as the assistant, like on that job, my job was to go out into the world and find things. And so it was, a lot of designing for film and television is also kind of like a scavenger hunt of, we need this thing and now we have to go find it. And can we find it or do we build it or do we, so like, um, and that's kind of the, um, yeah, that's like what design I think is. And so on that job, I got to do that. But it was really fun being on Helpsters, and Kayla Wall, who's a designer, was fantastic. And that show was nominated for an Emmy for best costumes for daytime, for variety show or daytime, something like that. So that was pretty great. Uh, and she's a fantastic designer, Kayla. So, and I think like in that one, it is when you're doing a kids show, it's a lot about bright colors. It's about fun and these, so that was pretty great. Yeah.
So, also on your resume, I found this series Blind Spot, where there is this character with a very distinct style and clothing. I always love when you have this movie where you have, or a TV series where there is a distinct style for the character. I don't see them changing it. I think it's harder, or correct me if I'm wrong, for the designer to create a look that would get stuck with the viewer, but at the same time doesn't get boring. So, how fun or how hard was that?
Yeah. Well, Blind Spot was a one I loved working on Blind Spot. We did that just before the pandemic hit. I was again on that one, the assistant costume designer, and I worked underneath Thea Bounds, who's another phenomenal costume designer who just an amazing leader and really empowering with her team. And on that show, the thing is interesting. We came in and took over in season 5. And so the interesting thing when you're taking over a TV show is that you're really stepping into what was already established, right? We're stepping into, at that point, there were 4 seasons. We're coming in for the last season. And we're really kind of there to build the rapport with the actors and maintain what has happened while also improving on the things that the producers did not like before. And so it more becomes about that. And when you're designing for somebody, when you're designing and taking over something and fitting in seamlessly, it gets to become, I don't know, I like this. I don't think it's very limiting. Some people go like, oh, I want to make it my own. And I go, it is my own because I get to choose the choices that go on camera. And to me, I think it's really fascinating to go, okay, this is the creative vision that was here before me. How do I understand it, identify it, and work with it and understand and really that's where like understanding how worlds are built is so important, because I can go, okay, here's what they've been doing. Here are the tools and techniques that they've done. They've used color this way. They've done this way. Certain actors will only wear certain things. So then you learn those bits and how do you shape that in the colors of the world. And that becomes the way that we kind of adjusted and worked with the project.
So
Yeah.
for me, I think hair and makeup design and costume design, they work first line with the actors. Is working with the actors something that you enjoy? Do you like the fittings? Do you like the conversations? Or is it something that you find a little bit difficult? Like, I want to know your perspective.
I would say that if you are in costumes, hair, and makeup, you better enjoy working with actors a lot, and you better like people a lot. I love actors. I love working with people, and it's why I choose to do more group activity type creative work, such as design versus studio art. Being in a room by myself doesn't all the time doesn't necessarily serve. And I like being able to talk to people about things. And so, and I think it's really fun. Like costume design itself is a collaboration between the director, the actor, and myself, and as the designer. And so you really get to kind of have these moments, and you're coming up with options as well. It's not like you just go in, unless you're doing a period film or like a film with like really specific a built piece. You're typically going in with a rack of options. So if someone's wearing one suit, we have 5 suits on the rack, 5 to 6 shirts on the rack, a couple pairs of shoes, a couple belt options, tie options. Right, like if they're a guy, if they're a woman, maybe there's no tie, or maybe she's wearing a tie. And all to figure out what fits the best, because every body's different, and everybody wears their clothes differently. Everyone feels comfortable in something slightly different. And then you're also then providing a few options of what it could look like and be for the producers and the director, as well as when you're designing like that with what I would call found object design, right? So these suits and these shirts exist in the world, and we're going to go buy them, bring them in for a fitting, try them on, and return what we don't use, and what we don't keep. You're providing options to the producers and the director in terms of what it looks like, and you're providing yourself options in case you're like, oh, I was going to put him in a blue suit, but turns out that our main guy wants to wear a blue suit. Like I fit this guy before our main guy because of the way schedule works out. And so now that blue suit's off the table for our secondary character. So he's going to be in the gray suit we fit instead, right? And because we're telling the story. And in television, it's really interesting because you sometimes do and sometimes you don't know what the next episode is going to bring. So you're kind of trying to figure out how to lay out the story in a way that continues the arc if you don't have the episode. And then you're also looking at like what the character is going to want, an actor's going to want to wear, and all of these things. And then you're playing this puzzle game of like, okay, who can wear what when as well, and what serves the story and what serves the character. I don't know if that answered that.
Definitely, definitely. And I know what I saw in 18 and a half was very precise details, great colors, setting mood. So I want to know, this is a limited budget movie. How do you come up with great costumes and great design, and at the same time work with whatever limited sources you have, especially for the characters of Connie and Paul? Like the outfits were just amazing. So I want to know more about that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So 18 and a half was a film I designed, and was pretty stoked that it was eligible for the 2023 Oscars. That was a pretty cool moment. And I would say for that film, I'm a very texture-based designer. I would say that's probably predominantly my way into the worlds that I build is through texture. That's I mean, texture is one of those interesting things that it's how we experience the world. It creates a tactile quality for us. And to me, that's what makes the world visceral and makes it grounded and real. And so that was kind of where I focused for the most part in 18 and a half. And I had $2,000 for that film. So it
Oh
was a
my God.
very tight budget. And I lucked out that I own a costume rental company called Grandma's Closet. And so I was able to pull a bunch of stuff from what I already owned to make this work. And then I mean, that film was wild. Like I did a lot of like Paul's jacket, that is his suit jacket, that's now like a dark, like a kind of a gray blue, was actually white and like a white and black tweed. And so like I had to very carefully dye it because suit jackets have interfacing, and interfacing is what gives them that like stiff structure in the front, and when you get it wet it can ruin them, so you can only dye things by getting them wet. And so that was like that was a little scary, but I was able to make it work, and that was kind of great. And so like you kind of it became finding the right piece in that case, and then altering it either by tailoring it or dyeing it to get them to be the right size and right color for the actors. And that was really what the film was about.
Because I see, from what I see now, Sarah, you have a very strong leadership, initiative, and you're always out there. So even at your times when you were just assistant or just even in college and just starting out your career, did you always have this sense? I don't feel like you've always been a follower, or even when you were working under someone, you didn't implement a part of your vision. So were you always this strong, outgoing, like, let me just do this first persona, or did it develop through days? I'm interested.
Well, I mean, leadership's interesting, right? Like, I'm actually really big into leadership. I do a lot of leadership seminars. I work on my leadership skills outside of the industry as well. I literally, it's something I'm very um, passionate about getting better at. And I think leadership is extremely important. And any role you have as a filmmaker is a leadership, right? If you're the director, you're a leader. You're a producer, you're a leader. You're an actor, you're a leader. I had the pleasure of getting to work with John Heater, and he's a leader. Like, he really sets the tone on a set for um, camaraderie and joy, and it made working with him was phenomenal, and everybody felt included and connected, and and I think you can lead from any position. So when I assist, and I always tell people, this is my number one recommendation to any new filmmaker is, look, wherever position you're in, come in with the intentionality that the person that you are reporting to doesn't have to worry, that you're going to step in and take care of everything that they need taken care of so they can rest assured. And I'm pretty sure that that's why I've had the trajectory with my career I've had. I mean, I've gone in when I assist designers, it's like, all right, tell me what you need. Great. You have a family. I don't. Like, when I don't currently have a family. And so it's like, I don't need to be home right away to go have dinner with my kid. You have a kid, go home and have dinner with your kid. I'll handle this. And, or empowering your PAs by, your production assistants, by teaching them something, or including them in some information so that they can learn from that and grow. And I think, like that, right? That's how you can empower and step into leadership from a place of where, and in all of that, I constantly will be like, I'm not the boss. I serve so and so, right? I serve this designer and their creative vision and what they need, and I'm here for them. And so I'm just here to make sure that they're taken care of, and that I'm helping to make sure that the department is set up to win. And to me, that's creating an environment where people feel safe and like they can trust that they're going to be taken care of and that things are getting done.
So now you're definitely, it was wonderful, but I get the vibe, because sometimes you have something inside you. You get the vibe when someone else has it. So yeah, I could for that. You're amazing in this area. What I
Thanks.
want to know is, now you have a series that you're preparing, but what is a dream collaboration? What is an ambition that you want to reach in the future? Do you have a certain director, a certain actor, something that you just want to build with a particular person or through a particular world?
Great question. I mean, I do have people I would love to work with. I mean, I would say, like, at the moment, Guillermo del Toro is on my list. But I'm also one of those people, like, I don't know. I actually have no idea what people say about working with him. I kind of have a no assholes rule. So, like, I'd rather not work with someone famous if they're considered a jerk, and only work with people who are lovely humans. And because I have a zero tolerance for any sort of bullying behavior, any sort of manipulative, lying behavior on set. Like, I have a zero tolerance. And so I just, for me, it's mostly about working with people who are really love what they do, want to, want to create something interesting, are willing to trust me to bring ideas to the table, as well as give me it. It's that fine balance, right, of, as a filmmaker, of being like, I have a really clear vision and I know what I want, and I'm also open to other thoughts and ideas. What will allow us to move forward the best? And that's because as a director, you're getting asked questions from everybody, right? You're the nexus point. And in well, it's funny, I saw it also in San Antonio this last week, but in Madrid they have a marker that's called my marker like kilometer zero, and it was the center point, and then every road that leads out from Madrid is marked like 99 kilometers, 200 kilometers. And so, and that was your 200 kilometers from the 0 point. And it was so that people knew, like back in the medieval era and Renaissance and stuff, people would ride their horses. It wasn't medieval, I think it came out in the Renaissance. You knew how far away you were from the center of the country to be able to then disseminate news so that could then go out to the rest of the country. Right. And that is really, directors are that kilometer zero of information. And I break down the filmmaking, like what I call the layers of storytelling in film, into 4 layers to give people a sense of what is the kilometer zero look like across all the different areas, because everybody's going to be coming in to ask a question to the director. And so, and if it's coming from 200 kilometers away, it's getting relayed to the designer who's 10 kilometers away, who's then going to come in and be like, hey, by the way, what do you want about this? If that, so I'm more interested in, I'm also starting to, like, in terms of projects that I really want to do, like I want to be involved in projects and with filmmakers who also get that I understand story, and that I understand design as a whole, and that I'm working with filmmakers who go, hey, Sarah, we're doing this thing. What do you think? And if I go, it'd be really interesting is if we did this with the set, and I'm only doing costumes, and I go, what do you think of that? That people are going to be open to that and receptive to it, rather than, why are you stepping on my toes? Because of course that's never the idea. The idea, I think it's Spielberg who's known for, even if a PA has a great idea, he'll listen to it because it's about what's the best idea for the story, rather than where did it come from. And that's the kind of people I want to work with. I mean, that's really what it's about.
And I can see you doing this in the future. Seriously, Sarah, you have a lot. It's like you have a box of stories and colors and ideas, and I can see it manifesting. So I'm just so excited to see your series. I hope I will keep following you to see when it comes out so that we have a conversation about it later on.
Thanks. Well, let's first get it sold after the strike is done. That's the first step, is getting it sold and into production. So we'll see.
Definitely. Can't wait. Can't wait, seriously, because
Thanks.
there is a lot that I can aspire to. So, other than the series, do you have anything else that you're working on or just have in mind or not yet?
I do. I have a lot of things. So I teach workshops on world building and film design, and how do you connect that to your script? So you can find all that information on my website, which
Yeah.
is sarahcogan.com. And then I also just finished the first draft of my book on film design for filmmakers. So I'm still working on the title, but it's all of the, like, what are the 5 tenets of design? How do you world build? What does a collaborative process look like? What are the tools to use to kind of create your vision, to help articulate what you want? And, what questions to ask to find the right collaborators, things like that, that really hopefully open up, what we talked about earlier, this gap of information and connection between, the director and the design teams, and even hopefully help with relationships with the cinematographer too, of like, what kind of story we're telling? Why are we choosing to frame it this way, or to set up the composition of the shot this way? How does that, so much of what we do has a lot to do with the optic, like how we perceive things through our mind's eye, and the optical illusions that occur. There is something called frame pull, where items closer to the edge of the frame feel further apart, right? If I put my hands out here, they feel like they're sticking to the sides of the frame, and the space between them feels really far. But if I move them together, they're not as affected. They don't feel so far apart. I mean, you can tell because I'm of my space of me, but also the gap. I don't know if it's reading well, but it should feel like this hand's sinking, like going funk, funk, right? Like it's, whereas by moving my hands into the frame, right? So that's a storytelling mechanism of like utilizing the edge of the frame to create a sense of distancing between 2 elements, or to push somebody up against the corner of a frame to make them feel, if you have, I kind of use this example in my book, if you have a person here, two people arguing, and they're like, rah, 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 rah. They're in the middle going back and forth, it feels pretty even, right? If this person is shoving this person over to the edge of the frame, right? Rah, 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 this person then feels like they're stuck, right? There's nowhere to go because they literally are up against this frame. And so it's a way of, how do you utilize that kind of composition to tell your story? And that's just one example. There's tons of books on cinematography and what makes a shot and why it is amazing. Once you start putting all the other elements into it, there's not much to talk about that. And so I really try to talk about, here are all the elements. This is what all the elements isolated do. This is what color does isolated. This is what line and form does when you isolate it. And now, how do you put all those elements together through the production design, the costume design, the hair, the makeup, the cinematography, the special effects, the sound design, to create a cohesive world and a cohesive story? And so that's what it's kind of like my mission is. What's the thinking behind it, right? I really don't believe in the idea of genius. I believe that when people go, I don't know, I just have this feeling that it should be, if you stop and you actually go, what were all the individual thoughts that came up that led in those microseconds that led to me going, let's do that. Oh yeah, this is the image. That is the research image or whatever. When you actually stop and you pause and you go, what are the actual what's the thought process that happened behind this? You'll realize there's a series of decisions and understandings and choices that were made that led to this quote unquote intuition. And that intuition in a lot of ways, I think, is mastery of the skills. And so my goal is to teach people the skills so that they too can eventually master it.
Definitely. I mean, I'm an avid film lover and I can't wait to read this book. So I'm imagining professionals. I'll just put Sarah's link in the YouTube description and on social media too, because Sarah has a lot to tell the world. And I can't wait for the world to see more and more of her. Sarah, you're amazing. Thank you so much. I can't wait for the series. I'll be watching and just waiting and cheering you on. Thank you for being
Thanks.
my guest.
Thank you for having me, Jay. This was amazing. It was so fun to be here.
So fun to have you too. Bye bye.
Bye. Thank you.